The following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome back to another episode of Something More with Chris Boyd. My name's Jeff Perry, and I have a cold. Sitting in here with Chris Boyd, who has
We're
a
all
cold.
fighting the cold, so you can't. It's that time of year.
I know we can't save each other by hitting the cough button. We might hit it at the same time. So for this episode, Chris, from time to time we do a mailbag where we take questions from listeners or common questions from clients, and we have one of our advisors answering the questions. So since my voice is a little worse than yours, I figured we'd put the CEO in the hot seat today to answer some of these questions, and they all revolve around the IRA, the beneficiary IRA, Roth IRAs. Can I work and contribute to an IRA? All these things that we used to know the rules because they were pretty simple, changed with some acts of Congress, the Secure Act.
Secure Act 2.0. And
that's right.
So, it gets a little confusing now.
And so the rules that people think they know may not be true. And the new rules are a bit confusing. There are a lot of what ifs and things like that. So I've gathered up these questions for you, and
all right,
we'll see how many we can get through. So the first one is from a gentleman who's 75 years old, and he is actually working still. He's working, and he has an IRA, and he is taking his required minimum distributions. And for the listeners who don't know, depending on your age, and certainly 75 is old enough, if you have a traditional IRA, you have to start taking required minimum distributions because the government wants to get your money. They want to tax.
They want to start taxing.
You deducted it when you put it in.
Patiently waiting.
Yes, you deducted it probably from your income when you put it into this IRA, and you haven't paid your.
Went in through your 401k or 403b, payroll deducted, but it was pre-tax dollars.
And the government has been waiting for decades, in this case, probably to get the ability to tax. So they require you to take a minimum distribution. It's determined by how much you have in the account on the last day of the previous year. So this gentleman is taking his RMDs, and he's working, and he wants to know if he can still make contributions to an IRA, and if so, can he deduct his contributions, assuming his income is within an acceptable level?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and again, as you just started to allude to, there's relevant details about how much you make that could be part of the equation. But with the Secure Act, this did change, right? That it used to be when you were taking distributions from your IRA, you weren't eligible to contribute to it anymore. But that's now not the case. You can make contributions to your retirement account while you're even required to take a distribution. So that's one you can. Now, again, there's income thresholds of eligibility to be able to make a deductible contribution to an IRA. So you got to make sure you fall within those parameters. And they're different when you're trying to do Roth contributions. But again, there too, if you wanted to, you could be eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA. But of course, then you're paying the tax on the way in. It doesn't get you that deduction in the other instance that you're describing. The inquiry had in mind, but these are all possibilities.
So in this case, there's money out of the IRA annually and money going in with his.
Might help reduce the tax burden. Make it a wash or something, right?
Yeah, and you might keep it the likelihood of the IRA surviving is increasing. So keep working.
Yeah, keep working, keep contributing. Crack that whip. You can picture the spouse in the background. Right?
I can. But more and more we know
around here, right? That kind of
thing. We do know that more and more people are working. The days of hitting that number, whatever, 65, and saying I'm done working. People are finding joy, fulfillment. Not just people who need income, right?
Yeah. I think you're right. It's a much more common experience to have someone say, maybe I'll slow down, maybe I'll work less,
Right.
maybe I'll work at a job that's not stressful compared to what I was doing. I just was heard from a client who said he's going to be a runner for one of the auto dealerships, which I think is like the ultimate retirement job.
Well, that's
I'm
when
just
you
gonna
drive the cars all
just
around
gonna
from
drive
dealer to
people from
dealer
here
or
to there.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. They need a ride from their work to the dealer or back and forth, whatever, to while it's being serviced. That seems like a pretty great
Retirement job.
retirement job, doesn't it?
Especially if you like to drive. I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
people like to drive, and you get to drive all these different types of vehicles, presumably, right?
right. That doesn't sound bad. So anyway,
Hopefully,
and
you're a
it's like
good
a few
driver.
days a week. It's not a heavy lift, what'd you
Yeah.
say?
Hopefully, you're a good driver.
Yeah, and if the road construction would slow down, it might make it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
In any case, yeah. So in any case, I think you're right that that's a very common kind of thing. People kind of reimagine. It's a little bit of money in their pocket, keeps them from going out and what should I do? I'll go spend money. They've
Right.
got there's some money coming in that they can then use for some of their fun and
Social interactions with
social
coworkers,
interaction.
maybe, or
Yep,
purpose, or whatever the reason is.
exactly. All these important considerations that can give them some fulfillment in the process and help finance. Maybe relieve taking some of the strain off their
Sure.
investments for a while longer. All good.
All those things, right? This next question has to do with being a beneficiary of an IRA, a traditional IRA, but this one's a little bit, you're going to have to answer this in two ways, I think, because
Yeah.
this is a beneficiary of an IRA from the year 2019. And
Okay.
so something happened in the Secure Act that drew a distinction, right?
Yeah. So prior to 2019, you had the if someone passed, you were permitted to have a lifelong what they call stretch IRA. So you'd have over a lifetime to take those RMD distribution requirements as the beneficiary of an IRA. So
That was a calculation. Like if the beneficiary was 60 years old, it would be spread over that life expectancy of maybe 20 some odd years.
yeah. So well, I mean, there's the primary way people do it is using that table, the
Right.
one of the tables. So in the case of a beneficiary IRA, this is something people don't always realize. You don't always use the uniform table. You use the single life table when you're the beneficiary of an inherited IRA, let's say, right? So
Well, that's what we're talking about here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, let's put some like just some items. So client dies. The client is 60 years old who dies,
Hmm.
has kids that then receive the they're the beneficiaries of the IRA.
Okay.
In this case, the client that I had was a Roth IRA. Okay. So now in this scenario, well, it wouldn't matter whether it was an IRA, a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. The kids now have this money that they have because this parent died prior to 2020. They have a lifetime to take it out over a stretch lifetime distribution.
That was the term, right? A stretch IRA.
Stretch IRA, so they
Right.
can take it out. That's calculated, as you said. Usually, the way people do this is to look at the value of the IRA on a given day, the,
Mhm.
the end of the prior year, and then to use a life expectancy factor. In this case, it's taken from a single life table as opposed to the uniform table that we
Okay.
use when it's my own IRA.
Yep.
So in any case, and then over that period of time, they say, well, how old are you? Okay, there's your number, the factor, the assumed life expectancy that's on that table, and that is the amount that we take the balance divided by that life expectancy assumption, and there's your distribution requirement. And when you're younger, of course, that's a long time. So
Sure.
this, as a percentage, it's a very modest percentage, and so it can continue to grow and so forth. And every year you have a requirement, you have to take something out. Now, in the last few years, the IRS has been pretty lax on dealing with the distributions from the penalty taxes on distributions when they weren't taken, particularly for situations where it's post 2020 death, right? Or 2020 or after, because the rules changed, right? So now what happens there? Let's make up a new scenario, same setting.
Say it happens today.
Same situation, just different scenario, right? So, in the case of a traditional IRA, they have now 10 years to take their money out, that they have to take it out. Now, in this case, this individual who died didn't have distribution requirements yet, right? He was 60 in that scenario that I just gave.
The RMDs didn't start.
So they didn't have a distribution requirement. So they're not required to take something out over the 10 years. If they want to take it out in equal amounts, they want to take it out in chunks here and there, all doable. They can take out as much or as little as they want.
So they could wait until the last minute.
They could take it the last. Yeah. So essentially the let's say the person died in 2023.
Okay.
So they'd have 10 years after that. So 2034 that they'd have to make sure they took everything out by the end of 2034. Okay.
And there's tax consequences to this money coming out to the beneficiary at this point.
Yeah. So, or would that be 2033? I'm actually doing my math and making sure I did that right. So it'd actually be 2033, right? To 10, you'd have 2030, 2024, 2025, and so forth.
Never do math on live.
Yeah. So it'd be 2033 that you'd have to have that out. Sorry. What was your question that I got distracted?
Because I think some people may be thinking of this as, well, we're talking about someone who doesn't need the money, so they're just waiting and they're allowing the earnings and dividends and capital gains to build. But it's not that simple, because there is a tax consequence when the beneficiary takes the money out.
Traditional IRA that they inherited, all that money's subject to tax. So if you waited till year 10 and just took it all at that time, you might have a lot of income in a given year, depending on the size of the IRA, right? But it might be, might be punitive, that it might be better served to do it more gradually. And this is something you'd want to talk to it, your tax advisor, your financial advisor, get some counsel in the process.
Because you'd be up, in theory, depending on the amount, you could be in the top tax bracket paying the highest rate on the top amount.
Right. Could really drive you up. Now, if it was a Roth IRA, you still have the 10-year requirement, but in this scenario where the person wasn't subject to any distribution requirements, and you're good. You don't have to worry about taking anything out until year 10, and you could just have it grow and let it stay in the tax-free environment as long as possible, and that might be a good idea.
I think most of our listeners understand what you're saying, but for the listeners who don't get the distinction, why the Roth IRA can come out whenever and is tax-free, why is that?
Well, you've already paid the tax on the way in, right? So when someone either converts to a Roth IRA or contributes to a Roth IRA, they're paying the income taxes in that year on the start of the investment in the Roth IRA. So then when it comes out, whatever it grows into is free from tax. So the idea of trying to keep it in there as long as possible is very appealing, and let it grow and amass to more. Now, if we had a different scenario though, Jeff, let's imagine, someone's parent who is already receiving distribution requirements. Let's say they're 80 when they pass instead of 60 in this.
Okay.
Scenario.
And we're in today's world. We're post.
Post 2020.
Right.
Now, in this scenario, there's been some confusion about when do I have to take a distribution. So the person who died at age 60 wasn't subject to required distributions. Their beneficiary IRA, the beneficiary who had inherited that IRA, they don't have to take anything out annually, but they do have to take it out within the 10 years. In the case of someone who has already started taking distributions, they call that the required beginning date. They do have that now. The inheritor, the beneficiary inheriting that IRA, mom's IRA, let's say, right?
Yep.
Now, you do have a distribution requirement for the 10-year time frame, but you also have to take something out every year. And again, it's calculated based on, your single life table and all that in most instances. Now, this can get confusing, right? Because wait, in one instance, I have the 10 years and I don't have to take something out. In another instance, I have the 10 years and I do have to take something out every year. The IRS over the last few years has not enforced a penalty tax because of the confusion, but the confusion should be resolved now. So in this year, if you're a beneficiary IRA and the person you inherited that IRA from, if you have that, and if they had been taking distributions, they were of age that they had a distribution requirement, you also have a distribution requirement that you need to adhere to.
So even if the beneficiary was 10 years old,
yeah,
they still have that. They still have to follow that.
right. Now there are some exceptions, just as an aside, Jeff. So there, I will add a caveat that there are some exceptions. If you inherited that IRA from, a sibling, you might have a different set of rules applicable. In the case of if that 80-year-old had a 10-year-old child, their own child,
Okay.
there's some different rules that apply until they become a certain age. Then it goes to this 10-year kind of thing. But there's some very particular rules of who gets to get.
Well, it's a good point, because don't assume that you know the general rule and apply it. You make sure that you get advice to your specific circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other variable, I don't know how we're doing on time, but we got a few minutes. One of the other things that we have to think about is, what if it's a Roth IRA? So 80-year-old mom dies, leaves adult child, their Roth IRA.
So taxes were paid in by the mom when she put the money in, before she put the money in.
Right. And there's no RMD for mom while she's alive, because it's a Roth IRA. They don't have an RMD. So what happens for me, the child, let's say, or you, the child of mom in this scenario, right? Adult child, that they're receiving that money. It's an inherited IRA. What rules apply? So
I know what fairness would be, but I know that doesn't apply to this circumstance.
Well, what do you think it ought to be?
I think it's Roth money. The taxes were paid. That's the deal. But
right.
I guess the deal is the deal was to the original.
No, you're absolutely right. There's not a tax event. You're fine with that.
Right.
It's not a tax issue. So there's still the 10-year issue, right? I have to take it out within 10 years because it's post-Secure Act and all that. So the question that was on my mind was, do we need to take an annual distribution, like a minimum required distribution to do it gradually, or not? It's not a tax event though, right? So the answer is no, you don't. You can be now or at the end. Probably you want to wait as long as possible because it's Roth money, but you don't have to deal with that just annual distribution requirement.
The government wanted to get it before it went too many generations.
Yeah, no,
and I know they're not taxing it, but it's into the economy. And
yeah, well, it has to come out of that beneficial status within the 10 years, and yeah, that's exactly it. That now they start, you invest that money in a different type of an account, and you pay interest on that, you pay taxes on the interest or the earnings or the capital gains or whatever it's going to be.
This does bring up the issue of Roth conversions and why so many people consider it, because of the favorable treatment to their heirs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about not everyone has a sizable retirement account, but imagine, you have $1 million retirement account, attainable for a lot of people, right? Now, let's say you have 2 kids, just to make it easy. Okay, $500,000 goes to each kid in their beneficiary IRA. If they have to take that out all in 1 year, even if they save that till year 10, that's a whopper of a tax, right?
Yep.
So if I can convert some of that money to a Roth IRA, they could take it out even if they took that over 10 years, that's $50,000 every year or more, hopefully, if it grows. That if they were going to stagger it so they don't have as much tax all in one, at the end kind of thing. If they're going to do it evenly, that's a lot of income to add to their tax return potentially, depending on what they make, right? So the taxes could be high. So, if I can take that money out and move it to a Roth and do it, however mom and dad might do that, more gradually or more, do it all at once, but presumably they do it over time, but they're in a position where they're not making as much. So they might be able to do it at lower tax bracket than maybe kids when they inherit it at high tax bracket. It can have some good generational tax planning.
Part
of it. The other thing is we all recognize the likelihood. We've talked about this many times that, although taxes are considered to be historically low, we've got $33 trillion in debt or whatever it is and growing.
Not to mention Social Security and Medicare reform.
All these off-book kind of obligations, right?
And wars across the world.
The likelihood is taxes will probably be higher for people in time. And so, and we know that tax rates go up in 2026, right? With the
at the end of 25,
Tax Cut and Jobs Act. So all these considerations can be incentivizing to think about a Roth conversion, at least for some amounts of money.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all of it. It can be
within your tax bracket, maybe.
Exactly.
I think we had another scenario, and I'm trying to remember what it was when we were talking about some of these. Oh, I had another issue that came up recently, Jeff, where...
Do we have time?
We got just a little time. 1 minute. Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
A gentleman who called about a story where the wife inherited some money, but it was the parents had not filled out the beneficiary designation well. So it went to the estate. What do you do then?
What rule applies?
Yeah. So in that scenario, normally you'd have a 5-year period of time where you could take it out, in a 5-year period rather than the 10-year clock. But in this instance, the executor or whatever of the state, I think it was, opted to take it all at once.
Yeah.
And so there was not the same tax treatment, tax strategy that you might have preferred. And, the hope was, maybe we could get it, more gradually. But once it's paid out to the estate, it's paid out.
It's a great reminder to make sure you have a beneficiary in place and the right beneficiary. A lot of people have beneficiaries who have died, or they never filled one out, or maybe a company changed.
Update those beneficiaries regularly. Review what they are.
Absolutely.
It's easy to overlook, but really important.
Yep.
So thanks, Jeff. All right, good stuff. Everyone, pay attention to your IRAs, right?
Absolutely.
And, update those beneficiaries. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Until next time, everybody. Keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.